Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to the Packernet Podcast. I am your host and resident fanalist, as always, Ryan Schlipp. Check us out online, packernet.com. Find me on Twitter, pack_daddy. So, I've been trying to figure out a lot of stuff. You ever hear of analysis paralysis? It's kind of a real thing. It's kind of what I've got. Sometimes I start thinking about all these cool ideas I want to do, and then I end up doing nothing for like a week. So that's kind of where I've been at. A lot of cool ideas that lead to doing nothing. So this morning I woke up and said, you know what? Let's just do something. It's maybe not exactly as you planned it in this brilliant scheme of yours, but who cares? But one thing I am going to start doing, I think, and you'll know this if you're looking at this on Facebook right now, but I want to also add these videos to Facebook. So Facebook, the podcast, and YouTube would be the actual thing. And the reason I want to also add Facebook, aside from just having a larger audience, obviously, but I like the idea of going live, doing some Facebook Live once in a while. I mean, you could do that with YouTube too, but I think there's about 4 subscribers I have on YouTube. So, but Facebook I think would be kind of cool. So if you're not there, be sure to jump on one of those. So if you're just a podcast listener, Packernet has a Facebook page. Be sure to jump on there. Hopefully this video will be there by the time you get there. Otherwise, something went terribly wrong. But anyways, that's kind of where I've been stuck at for the last week. The biggest reason is I get up very early to do this, and doing a Facebook Live at 4 or 5 or whatever it is in the morning would be kind of stupid. So I would need to start staying up late, and getting me to stay up past 8 o'clock, you might as well be asking me to eat vegetables or something else that would be horrible, because I don't do either of those things. But anyways, so somewhat some kind of news stuff going on. Not a whole lot. It's been kind of dead. But I don't know. It's the other analysis paralysis thing, is trying to figure out what my opinion is on things. I just don't know. Obviously, I'm excited about Jimmy Graham. I'm excited about Muhammad Wilkerson. But the more I look at it, especially now that we just lost Morgan Burnett to the Steelers, and how cheap, Jordy, we don't know the exact details of the contract, but Jordy's averaging, what, $7.5 million? And Morgan Burnett is a little under $5 million. So, dirt cheap. I mean, it was kind of like, I've been saying on this podcast for a very long time, we can't lose Morgan Burnett. Very, very important we don't lose Morgan Burnett. He's a leader on the defense. He's one of the few defensive backs we have. He can play cornerback. He can play safety. He can play linebacker. He can do absolutely everything. We need him in the locker room. Ha Clinton Dix cannot play without him. He is one of the key players. If there's one key player on the defense, it might be him. I know Mike Daniels and Kenny Clark, extremely important. But man, oh man, do we need him. But then I kind of thought, but yeah, he's supposed to command about $10 million, especially as free agency started and you look at the cap problem, and I'm thinking, man, I don't know if we can bring him back. I think he's probably gone. And then we let him go, and he signs for under $5 million. I don't understand that. It seems to me as though the Packers look at Jordy and Burnett and just say, we don't need him. We don't want him. Which I think is false. I think we need Morgan Burnett, and I think Jordy Nelson, despite having a bad year last year, I mean, he had 1 year left on his contract. 1 year left. You can't bring him back? He agreed to $7.5 million. So I kind of looked at it this way. The total cost as it stands, and I've seen a lot of numbers, but they're not exactly accurate because you don't take in the cap hit for cutting Jordy. So the total cost of cutting Jordy, Burnett doesn't cost anything because he was a free agent, but then bringing on Wilkerson and Jimmy Graham is $12,854,166. Had we kept Jordy and Burnett, and again, I don't know the structure of this, it could be a lot less considering how backloaded we made Jimmy Graham deal, which I think is kind of crazy, but I'll get to that in a minute. If we just take it at the average, Burnett for his 1 year deal and Jordy for $7.5 million, it would be $12,333,333. So about $500 less to bring back Jordy and Burnett. It's not an exact thing. Maybe Burnett wanted out. Uh, there's a lot of factors in this, but I guess the question for me, if I had the choice, would you rather have Jordy and Burnett for 12.3 million or Muhammad Wilkerson and Jimmy Graham for 12.8 million? It's pretty straightforward. I would rather have Jordy and Burnett. Um, so here's the thing with Jimmy Graham too. If you look at Jimmy Graham's contract, I should have put this in my notes so I didn't have to click around so much. But Jimmy Graham's contract is structured very backloaded. So this first year is 5.6 million, and it drives me nuts when I hear people, "Oh, Russ Ball's a genius. You idiots thought it was going to be so much money. Look, it's only 5.6 million. You don't know anything." Yeah, dummy. Look at next year. $12.6 million we owe the guy. 12.6. And we're not dumping him next year because 7.3 of that is dead cap if we cut him. It doesn't make sense to. However, in his third year we owe him 11.6 million, which is a sickening amount of money. But our dead cap, if we cut him, would be 3.6. My thought is that after 2 years we're probably going to cut him because $11 million is a lot of money. $3 million is eatable. $7 million probably not eatable. Edible? Eatable? Uh, and I guess it depends on his play. Maybe you can restructure it, but at that point he's 33 years old. So the problem is if you take this year's cap hit, next year's cap hit, and the dead cap money, because you have to include that. That's money that we are paying out. That is cap. That's going to hurt our cap. That's $22 million for 2 years, which is an average of $11 million per year is what we're paying Jimmy Graham if we cut him. If we don't, it's $10 million a year, right? Regardless of how genius Russ Ball is. That's a lot of money. And would I rather, Jimmy Graham, and there are certain things I like about Jimmy Graham, but if you just look at a Jimmy or Jordy, it's not even really close to me. We're talking about two guys that everyone's saying are on the downswing. I don't know if I buy either of those things. Neither guy gets a ton of separation, but neither of them really need it with Aaron Rodgers. Jimmy Graham is good in space because he can box people out. He can catch whatever, right? Just throw it up to him, he'll catch it. And I'll back that up in a second. Jordy Nelson, I don't think he's going to be very successful in Oakland because his success comes entirely from Aaron Rodgers and the camaraderie that they have. We know how good he is. Every time Aaron Rodgers is the quarterback, look how good he is. Now, Brett Hundley comes in, he can't do anything. He looked frustrated, he didn't really want to play, and his style of, he gets open deep once in a while, but it's that telepathic relationship that he has with Aaron Rodgers, right? The back shoulder throws, the timing, the red zone. I mean, there's a reason Jordy Nelson leads the league in touchdowns almost every year, or is at or near the top. It's because of the relationship. They know what to do. They can give each other a look, and he just takes off, and the ball's already there. That didn't decline. That was already in place the first however many weeks Rodgers was there. Jordy was near the top again in touchdowns. His stats were phenomenal. So the fact that we wouldn't bring him back, and I don't know again the details. Maybe they did offer, the rumor is they offered him like $1 million, which there's another question of, is that disrespectful? Yeah, I think it is. I had talked, this was a long time ago, but I had mentioned this whole disrespect thing probably back in like November, December. Because the talk was, well, we should try to restructure a contract, whether it be Jordy's or Cobb's. And I'm thinking, well, if you're going to do it to Cobb because he's going to be around longer. Extend Randall Cobb and pay him less this year, and then we'll free up cap money. That you don't grab a guy the year he's about to retire and say, hey, man, really appreciate everything you've done here. Here, look, I know how this is the last year for you to set up your life for the rest of your life, which, he's probably fine, but still, to come to the guy and say it's your last year, you're looking to get out, you're kind of old, everything kind of sucks for you. How about you just take $1 million, right? That's crazy. It's kind of like a guy turns in his 2 weeks, and you're like, hey, you know what? How about we don't pay you these 2 weeks? Huh? I mean, you've been here 40 years. How about a pay cut? Because we could use it. It's I don't like it. Um, and again, I understand moving on. He's just not in your plans, but I just don't really understand that. What is it that they're looking at and saying, yeah, we think Jordy's done. Let's get out in front of this and get rid of him. If you could have restructured him down to $7 million, go ahead and do it. We're paying him what? How much are we paying him to not be on the team right now? Come on, go back. I don't know what it is. Contract details. This is dumb. Whatever it is. Um, I got rid of my green. No, here it is, right here. Jordy Nelson. This is the one bad thing about doing it live. I can't hit pause. $2.3 million. So you figure $7.5 million, but we're also not eating just dead money for him to not be there. So 7.5 minus what is it? So $5.2 million more to keep him on the team. It's just, how is that not a no-brainer? And again, Morgan Burnett, I mean, that's nothing. For a guy as versatile and important as he is to this team, to not sign him to under five. We're already paying him. What are we paying him? $7 million we paid him last year. We can't pay him $5 to stick around? You can't sign him to a 2-year, $10 million deal? Or whatever? Come on. I don't get it. And then again, the two guys we get, Muhammad Wilkerson, look, again, he's 28. It's not even like we're saving on age, right? We gain 2 years. Muhammad Wilkerson is 1 year younger than Morgan Burnett. Jimmy Graham is 1 year younger than Jordy. And defensive line is one of the team's few areas where we don't really have a huge need. I've been saying we need to upgrade that Dean Lowry position for a while, but not like this. You could draft a guy. A defensive lineman that just kind of is a rotational guy. He comes in during your when you bring in your base, which is pretty rare these days. And he's just kind of a situational on 3rd and 12. You plug him in and you just have him go get the quarterback. And that's not even Muhammad. He's a run stuffer. I know he had double-digit sacks like twice in his career. That's fantastic, but he's much better against the run than he is against the pass. He's not a great pass. I mean, the guy's like 350,000 pounds, whatever. He's not a real quick on your feet kind of guy. He's a good run stuffer. And again, in our primary nickel package, he's not even going to be on the field, right? I mean, we have a better rotation. That's great, but man, we're paying out 4.8, and that's basically what Morgan Burnett got. Would you rather have Muhammad Wilkerson or Morgan Burnett? I would rather have Morgan Burnett. I know everyone's excited because Muhammad Wilkerson. Listen, he had the same Pro Football Focus grade as Dean Lowry did. Over the last 2 years, Dean Lowry's grade was much higher because Muhammad Wilkerson was garbage last year. So it's another one of those more Martellus Bennett things where I'm looking at it and going, let's just temper our expectations a little bit. Now, what is a rotational defensive lineman who hasn't been good in 4 years really going to bring to this team at 28 years old? What's the high end? Right? Is he going to get double-digit sacks from the bench? I don't think so. Jimmy Graham I'm a little more optimistic about, but it's like, oh man, he's great in the red zone. So was Jordy. I just, and I don't know. I just don't know. It's cool, but we keep throwing money at this tight end thing, and it just doesn't work. Jared Cook was good toward the end of the year, and then we inexplicably cut him. We bring in Martellus Bennett. I told everybody, temper your expectations. He's not that good. He was terrible. Then we hilariously, who are the tight ends we have on this team here? Richard Rodgers, we know, is not any good. And we bring in Lance Kendricks, and everyone's like, "Oh man, Lance! Remember, he's pretty good, and he's a Badger." He's never been good. Lance Kendricks is not a good tight end. He's never been. Why? What is it about this team that's like, you know what? We need a tight end more than. Let's cut Jordy and go get a tight end. Why? Why are you doing this? Another funny little tidbit. They're talking about how Jimmy Graham, he's just a wide receiver. He can't block. In run blocking and pass blocking, he was graded higher than Richard Rodgers and Lance Kendricks. So nobody on this team can block at tight end. zero blocking going on anywhere along this tight end position. So that's just kind of where I'm at with it. I don't understand it. I don't really know. I would love to get in and just figure out what it is. Right? Do we feel confident in our young wide receivers? Are they looking at, I don't know, Michael Clark and some of these other guys and saying we've got a lot of young talent, they can really step up? I doubt it. Right? What do we? He had like what, one touchdown pass in preseason. I don't think they're looking at that way. Maybe Josh Jones is going to replace Morgan Burnett, but why? What are you basing that on? He had a terrible year last year. Horrible year. How do you know it's going to be fine without him? And again, for this amount of money, you can't bring Morgan Burnett back for one more year? And Clinton Diggs, how terrible was he when Morgan Burnett isn't around, when he was hurt? Dude couldn't play at all. So I guess it's just confusion. I want to trust, but this is so just dumb on its face. I just want to talk to somebody and say, why? What is it you see? What is Mike Pettin telling you about the guys that we have that's like, you know what? Our defensive backs are fine. Right? Demarius Randall, yeah, he was our best defensive back, but I just don't want him. Let's just trade him away. I don't care. Morgan Burnett, he's just not my guy. I'm just not feeling it. What are we doing? I just want to know. I'm just curious. All right, let's get off that. So the question I have is now, I want to look at our current roster, which is not promising, by the way, and kind of turn. You can see I still have for those of you watching this, I still have my big board up. Not really relevant. It's just, I just wanted to put stuff on the screen, and I don't really want to take it down because I don't know what else to put there. But let's talk a little bit about the draft. Not specifically, but just in terms of what we need to look for, because there's a lot of stuff. Things are not good. Quarterback, I think we're fine just because it's Aaron Rodgers or bust. And currently Aaron Rodgers is our quarterback, so we have nothing to worry about. And if he gets hurt, who cares who the backup is, because we're going to lose, and it just doesn't matter. I am a little excited about DeShone Kizer. I mean, as excited as you can be about a guy that you never want to play ever. But I mentioned this before. He kind of reminds me of a Josh Allen type. Real big, real strong. A lot of upside and potential and all that stuff. And then you sit him behind Aaron Rodgers and you don't expect him to start year one. I think there's a lot of potential there for DeShone Kizer. But again, don't care. Brett Hundley, I'm really hoping we can trade and get that 14th draft pick. If for no other reason than some extra draft collateral. I would rather move up in the third round, thanks to Brett Hundley, than to just bring back Brett Hundley, because I just don't have any desire for him to be back. Wide receiver, I think, is a very thin position now that we got rid of Jordy, because, again, I'm just not nearly as optimistic as a lot of people. Everybody loves Michael Clark. I don't really get it. He's 6'6". Okay, great. There's a lot of tall guys that are. He's a tight end. He's Jimmy Graham without any of the talent. I don't know. I don't really understand the Michael Clark thing. I mean, the only good thing about him is that he's kind of an unknown commodity. He could be a freak, right? Usually when guys go undrafted, it's because there's some major flaw in their game. Michael Clark played like a year of football. He was like a basketball guy that was like, hey, man, mind if I play football? And they're like, yeah, sure. He plays for like a year, and then he's like, I think I'm going to go to the NFL. Bye. So teams are kind of like, yeah, we don't know anything about you. Like, we have more of a track record of you playing basketball than anything else. What are we supposed to do with you? So the guy could just be an absolute freak show, for all we know. But there's no reason to say that. And as far as his grade, which granted, only 75 total snaps, the only player that was worse than him is Geronimo Allison, which is another guy that you can't talk bad about. Oh, we're fine. We got Geronimo Allison. He had like 2 really good plays. And everybody all year was talking about how great he is. He had a really terrible grade. It's not great. I mean, there is a steep, here's Devontae, then you got Randall, and then I don't even know how far the screen goes down because I got rid of it, but hopefully it's off the screen because it's just, there's nobody else. I really like Jeff Janis. And I know as much as I'm making fun of everybody else for liking guys who have no potential, um, the reason I like Jeff Janis, and nobody ever talks about this, it drives me nuts. I'm the only person in the entire world that mentions this. Jeff Janis is like 6'3", 220. He ran a 4.42. He is the fastest wide receiver. He is Jordy Nelson's size, Trevor Davis's speed. Trevor Davis ran a 4.42. Jeff Janis ran a 4.42. Trevor Davis is like 48 pounds. He's a twig. Right? He's a small guy, but he runs fast. So that's cool. You want to talk about potential and upside? Again, Jordy Nelson, Trevor Davis, Jeff Janis. And if for those that aren't watching, I put my hands together so it's blending them together to make Jeff Janis. The potential and the upside, and we've seen flashes. You want to talk about Geronimo Allison showing a couple plays? We've seen Jeff Janis in the preseason every year. He's phenomenal. Why it doesn't translate to the regular season, I'm not sure. Right, there was the big Hail Mary play that he went up and got, which is beneficial when you're 6'3" and you're stronger than everybody else that's over on the defense playing defensive back. I think there's a ton of potential with Jeff Janis, but I just, if his only role is to be a gunner at this point, if he can't learn to play wide receiver, I acknowledge it's probably time for him to go, but it's so hard for me to let that go. So much speed, so much size, so much potential. It's crazy. Colby Pearson, he was sort of the big shot in training camp before he got hurt. So not a huge sample size, not a ton of real genuine promise other than he showed a flash. He got hurt and we never heard about him again. Jake Kumaro, don't even know who that is. D'Angelo Yancey, one of the few guys here that was actually drafted. He was drafted in the 5th round, but he was expected to be a high priority free agent or whatever. So, you know, do I think we need a wide receiver? Yeah, I do. You look at it and go, well, you got 13 picks. You're probably not going to draft 13 guys. You'll probably just use a lot of that to trade up or back. We might need all 13. Just take a ton of swings, and hopefully a couple of these guys pan out. You know, they're not all going to make the team, but who cares, right? Take the garbage guys, get rid of them, and just hope we get like 5 really good football players, and hopefully one of them is a wide receiver. Running back is a position that I'm real excited about. Jamal Williams is becoming one of my favorite players, even though Aaron Jones, you want to talk about Pro Football Focus grade, phenomenal. He actually wasn't given a rank because he doesn't have enough carries, but and I usually don't give out grades specifically, but it was in the 80s, which is very, very good. Jamal not nearly as high, but he was real slow to come around. I think it's not quite as natural. I think the Packers like Jamal more than, maybe because they drafted him higher and they're very stubborn about, if you were drafted higher, you're better, so we're sticking with you. But Jamal Williams and Aaron Jones, I think, are going to make a real good duo, and we'll get to it very shortly. But I blame a lot of the lack of success, which there was quite a bit of success, especially for rookies. But I blame a lot of that on the offensive line, which again I'll get to it in a second. But I am shocked that again I'm the only one talking about it. Everyone else seems to act like it's fine. That might be our biggest issue. Defensive back is real bad. That's probably our biggest issue, but I don't think offensive line is very far behind. That is a catastrophe. If we go into 2018 with no new offensive linemen, absolute catastrophe. Nightmare. Horrible situation. Last year it was it was a nightmare. Nothing's got better. Why all of a sudden are we just like we go into the draft like, well, we need corner and a wide receiver, and we list everything, but nobody mentions offensive line. I had a guy scream at me because I said McCray was garbage. Justin McCray. Guy lost it. He's not garbage. He's great. Maybe it was McCray. Maybe he found me on YouTube and flipped out. I don't know, but I was stunned that somebody actually defended McCray. I just thought it was kind of common knowledge among everybody that's ever heard of McCray that he's not very good at playing football. I was mistaken. There's at least one guy out there who found my YouTube video that thinks Justin McCray is a phenomenal player. Anyways, running back, I think we're set. I really don't think they're going to draft any running backs. I mean, I know best player available and all that stuff, but I really think they're going to avoid it as best as they can. It's possible if like some real elite. Like if Saquon Barkley falls to 14, do you draft him? And I heard some people saying no. Yes, you draft him at 14. There's no question. He might be the best player in this entire draft. You want to talk about best player available? It won't happen, but I'm just saying, if that's the situation, sure, draft a running back. That's absolutely fine, but I just don't think it's going to happen. They went running back crazy last year trying to fix the running back problems, and I think they're going to roll the dice with what they got. And Devontae Mays, I was real excited about him. He had some real unfortunate issues with fumbling every time he touched the ball, so then they cut him or, pulled him off the field, and we just didn't really get to see him. I think he's talented. And again, we just really didn't get a chance to see him, and he's so buried down the depth chart, it's possible he doesn't even make the team, which is unfortunate because I really do think he's talented. I really would like to see him get some more snaps, but he might have doomed himself with those fumbles. Fullback, Carriage and Ripkowski were not great. He's ranked 6th, but that's out of like 7 fullbacks that exist in the NFL. Not a very good grade. We've seen a lot better from Ripkowski. He just wasn't, I don't know what. Everybody kind of took a step back. The whole offense was, again, right here. You could write it on the palm of your hand. It was down to nothing because Hundley could do nothing. So it's hard to judge too critically based just on last year. Some guys really took a severe dip in production, especially the wide receivers, especially Jordy Nelson. But I kind of regression to the mean a little bit with this, where you can expect, if it's good, real bad last year, I'm willing to forgive that. And that's kind of how I see Ripkowski. I think he's a good football player. I just don't think last year was a good measure of how good he actually is. Tight end, kind of talked about it a little bit. Just a nightmare. It's always been a nightmare. The one thing I didn't really mention about Jimmy Graham, I was digging into the stats a little bit, and you kind of look at it, and you go to Pro Football Focus, and they have these real detailed stats, and there were 2 things that stood out. One, when you look at it, it starts off with guys that are on the field 50% of the time, and there's only about 10 of them, maybe a little more. But Jimmy Graham is on that list, and he's always kind of toward the bottom. Did not have a very good year last year, but you get to touchdowns, right to the top. Guy had 10 touchdowns last year. That's just really where he shines, and they know how to use him. The other thing I thought was interesting, though, was when you go to deep passes. I should check this screen because whenever I lean this way, my head's covered. That's good enough. When you look at deep passes, and I still have it up, I think, he only had 1 reception beyond 20 yards, right? You look at this and you go, man, he just doesn't have it anymore. Here's the thing. He had 92 total targets, which isn't very high. 9 targets that were deep passes. That is tied for lowest with Kyle Rudolph. So they didn't even throw it to him very often. But get this. Guess how many were deemed catchable? 1. Pro Football Focus said only 1 pass all year last year was a catchable ball beyond 20 yards, and he caught it for a 33-yard reception. Just 1. He had 1 deep pass that was catchable to him, and he caught it. They did not utilize him correctly. That got me more excited than just about anything. We know he's good in the red zone. The question is, well, what about, him stretching the field? Can he still do that? He caught 100% of the catchable balls downfield. They just never threw it to him deep. Something else I mentioned on Twitter the other day is that one thing Aaron Rodgers is going to have to do with Jimmy Graham is have a lot of trust. Because if you look at a Jimmy Graham highlight reel, the dude is never open. But he's always open, right? He's always covered. He's always got a guy in his hip pocket. But if you have an accurate enough quarterback, and Drew Brees was real good at this, right? Nothing but trust. He throw it up to him, sometimes in double coverage, and it didn't matter. Jimmy Graham's coming down with it. That basketball background and just sheer size and strength. He's just bigger and stronger and more talented at the jump ball than just about anybody. He's one of the best in the NFL at doing that. Just give me the ball. Just throw it up to me. Right? That's part of why he's so good in the red zone. But you need to have a quarterback that's going to drive it down the field, and I think Aaron Rodgers is going to be closer to Drew Brees in that regard than Russell Wilson. So I'm optimistic that we're going to see not necessarily Jimmy Graham in his prime, but I think it's going to be closer to the Saints Jimmy Graham than it was the Seahawks Jimmy Graham. And I think the Packers, you don't pick up a guy who you believe is on the downswing. All right, so there's two prevailing opinions. One, he's old and he's washed up. Two, the Seahawks didn't use him right, he still got it. We know what the Packers think. We know based on the fact that they paid him a lot of money. All right, they cut Jordy Nelson and brought in Jimmy Graham. So we know exactly what their opinion on that matter is. Continuing down this list, and usually I do 30 minutes, which is what we're at, but I don't care. Corey Linsley is one example of a guy who's been very, very good for basically 3 straight years, and Pro Football Focus and their stupid website is always glitchy. I can't look back at his previous years, but he's been incredibly good for, I think, 3 years, but this past year, terrible. So again, we're talking about offensive line now. I don't know what it was. As far as I know, he didn't have any injuries. Maybe he was battling something that we don't know about. But my concern is he was real good when he had Lang and sitting next to him. Then we get Lane Taylor and Jari Evans or McCray or whoever it is, this revolving door of different guys, and there's communication problems, right? There's a thing with offensive lines where guys that just stick together for a while, you start to see them get better and better. Even with Packers offensive lines, we've seen that. Where you get 5 guys together and it's been a revolving door and they're not very good, but then they stick together and then they've been together for a full year, and the next year the same guys come back and they're just not that good. But they're pretty good this year. And they just keep getting better and better. It's a communication thing, you know? So I'm hoping that's the issue, and I'm hoping we can get some better guards next to him, because moving on to guard now, first of all, Lane Taylor, nothing but respect for what he did, but we need to stop pretending he's a good guard, because he's not. He's a good backup, right? He's a good guy to have in a pinch when somebody goes down. He is not a starting guard. He is certainly not a starting tackle. So, again, nobody wants to talk about it because, Jari and Lane Taylor, they're pretty. No. Jari Evans, his great. I mean, this guy is incredible. I think he's going to be like 35 in the coming year here. Incredible. There has been a degrading of his grade over the years, but it's been so slight. This guy is one of the greats. Seriously. Just the fact that he was elite for so many years, and now his downslope has been like 10 years long, and he's gone from like here to here because it's so gradual. Really incredible what he's been able to do. But I mean, he's very much on the verge of being a bad guard, and I if it's been consistent just down this much every year, I just think he's on the verge of going out. So I think we need 2 new guards, and I'm wary of our center. Then we get to tackles. David Bakhtiari ranked number 1 in the NFL. He gets no credit, but we know as Packer fans, this guy is elite of elite. He's incredible. Zero concerns to that side. I'm not even going to discuss injuries because I refuse to jinx the man, so we won't even touch that. But Brian Bulaga, incredibly inconsistent, injury-ridden. So if you look at his grade, it's been here. I mean, consistently inconsistent, right? One bad year, one great year, one bad year, one great year. And the good news is this next year should be a great year because last year was pretty terrible. But even so, if you look at his contract, this year we're paying him $7.9 million. If we were to cut him, which is an impossibility because of how dire our offensive line situation is, our dead cap would be $3.2 million. Not horrible. Next year he's out $8.3 million, and the dead cap is only 1.6. So just looking at it from a financial standpoint, it makes sense to cut him, to let him go. He's 28 right now. He'll be 29 a year from now, obviously. So we're pushing 30 on a guy that has a real big injury history. So again, talking about the draft, I think a tackle is huge. We talk about who are guys to take in the first round. I don't know if Mike McGlinchey is around that you pass on him. Even Connor Williams, who is sort of that. he's on the verge, right? His arm length and all this stuff, which is very specific, is right on the verge of being a guard. So you get an athletic tackle who would be an extremely athletic guard, which the Packers love, that you can move around. Certainly would be a good right tackle. Um, I think that's worth consideration. I don't know if he's actually going to be there. I don't want to get too much into the draft, but he's Mike McGlinchey in particular is somebody that nobody really talks about, but he's been consistently an early first round to mid first round guy, premium position left tackle, and he might be the only true top talent left tackle in this entire draft. So it's possible he's gone before 14, even though no one's saying that. But anyways, a tackle like that could very well be a very good option and might be a very big need for the Packers going forward. But either way, I think we need at least two more guards. You can pick those up in the later rounds, which is nice. But I think that's huge. Cornerback, um, it's dire, and we know it's dire. And the refusal to sign people kind of makes me wonder if maybe Mike Pettin has a little more confidence. It's also possible maybe they see the depth of talent in the draft and they're excited about that. But I personally, no offense to the Packers, and maybe it was entirely Ted Thompson's fault, which I doubt because they have an entire staff that works on this that informs him and helps him to make his informed decisions. But I don't trust their ability to draft cornerbacks. They're just not very good at it. Um, but Devon House, who I don't think is even currently with the team, he's a free agent, I believe, might be our. I'm going to cry. Might be our best corner right now. Josh Hawkins and Kevin King. Now, Kevin King has a lot of promise, but again, it's one of those things where you can't just automatically say, yeah, well, Kevin King's going to be great. Maybe he's going to be really horrible, right? We had a first round guy that we just got rid of who was terrible, and then he was terrible, and then he was terrible, and then, right? Same exact. Demarius Randall went earlier than Kevin King. He went the first round. Kevin King was early second round. So we drafted Demarius Randall, kept assuming he's going to turn the corner, and he never did, and we just traded him. Kevin King had a terrible year, and you kind of go, well, yeah, well, we knew he was going to take some time to develop, but he's going to be great. I hope so, but we don't know that. And even if he is, fine. Who's going to play on the opposite side? Devon House is no good. Josh Hawkins no good. Demetri Goodson no good. Quentin Rollins no good. Herb Waters no good. Lindsey Pipkins, Donatello Brown not very good. Now, I'm willing to cut a little bit of slack to some of these undrafted free agents like Lindsey Pipkins. I think some of these guys did do really well, and it drove me nuts that Dom Capers never gave them a chance. I don't know if it was more Dom or Mike, but, how many times did we see, for example, Lindsey Pipkins come in for like 2 plays and he just locked it down, right? Immediately they see him, they throw to him, and he just, boom, swats the ball out of the way. No, that ain't happening. And as all the fans are cheering and going, dude, was that Pipkins? He's a freak. Keep him in, man. He's our new guy. What do? Hey, no. Out. Demarius, get in there. And he just suck. He was horrible. So part of me hopes, Mike Pettin came in and he's looking at it going, I don't know what Dom was doing. We got some good corners here. I think I can work with this cornerback room. Ideally, that's the case, right? He's looking at it and saying, these guys weren't utilized correctly. We have a ton of talent. Kevin King, oh my goodness, he's a freak. Quentin Rollins. Last year I was talking about how great he's going to be. I ate my words real hard. I'm about ready to go back to bat for him. Now, he had an incredible rookie year. Very, very, very good. Now, he had a good supporting cast. That's back when we actually had talented corners. But the talent's there. Right? And again, another early round guy. He was a second round draft pick. Plenty of talent. We've seen the talent. I'm just wondering, Mike Pettin's been studying this defense. What does he think? Can he use him? Does he know how to use him properly? He could be our slot guy. Maybe not. I don't. I'm trying to to think through this and understand why we're not doing anything about corner, and I'm just hoping that it has something to do with Mike Pettin saying we're not in as bad a situation as we think. Because as I'm looking at this, and as everybody else that I know of that's a Packer fan looks at this, it feels dire. So yes, corner, another big issue. So we need wide receiver. We need probably it wouldn't hurt to get a tight end. It's a pretty deep tight end class. There's a lot of talent. Some of these guys, like Mark Andrews, are talking about end of the third, which to me is kind of crazy. Troy Fumagalli, they're talking about maybe in the fifth round. I think there's a lot of talent. And I've heard some people say, well, great. Now, why are you signing guys when we can still draft guys? There's nobody saying we can't draft anybody, right? We got Jimmy Graham this year, probably next year, and that's it. Nobody's saying we can't develop a guy under Jimmy Graham for 2 years. We might need a center. We definitely need at least two guards. We need a tackle. We need probably two cornerbacks at a minimum. Safety has just become a massive need. Possible Josh Jones steps up, but even if he does, Josh Jones slips into that hybrid. He's playing some corner, he's playing some linebacker. We need another safety. Even with Morgan Burnett, we probably still needed another safety. When Josh Jones is playing corner or he's kind of roaming near the line of scrimmage, who's going to play safety? Kentrell Brice, no good. Marwin Evans, no good. Jermaine Whitehead, no good. Linebackers, I feel like they don't really get enough credit. I get this sense from Packer fans that they look at it and say Jake Ryan is trash. Blake Martinez has a lot of tackles, but that's about it, right? He's a tackling machine, but he's not that good. I don't think that's the case. And I'm looking at two guys. First of all, Jake Ryan was ranked higher. Both of them were ranked right around 20, but Jake Ryan was actually inside the top 20 in the NFL, which is crazy. Jake Ryan's coverage grade was actually really good. So the bigger issue for me is depth. I don't think Joe Thomas is any good. I don't even know if he's going to be back with the team. The only other guy that's listed here is Ahmad Thomas. Don't know anything about him. Don't expect him to ever step up and play. So inside linebacker is somebody that we need to consider, but I don't know that it's dire enough. Now, Tremaine Edmonds, who I think is his name because I keep confusing him with Tremaine Johnson. So yes, Tremaine Edmonds. I really, really like him a lot. I don't think he's going to fall, but man, oh man, if he does, I would love to have Tremaine Edmonds. Roquan, not as big of a fan. But outside of some of these elite guys, some later round, just guys that we can play that are rotational, that are backups, that are developmental, because I like the Jake and Blake thing. I think it works, especially with this defensive line that we've got. I think the front seven is actually pretty solid. Interior obviously is now pretty well set with Kenny Clark and Mike Daniels being the primary. Muhammad Wilkerson being a talented guy with a real high upside. A lot of talent. Maybe Pettin can drag some more out of him. And D. Lowry I like as well. I think he's an underrated guy. And he's sort of that pass rush. He comes in on 3rd and 12. You put in Dean Lowry, and his job is to just go get. He's 6'6", 295 or something like that. Smaller, longer guy who's really only going to go in and try to get after the quarterback. Quentin Dial is just. I don't know why we signed him. He wasn't very good in San Francisco. He's even worse here. Never understood it. And then we got Montravius, who's another very talented. So interior defensive line, I think, is just incredibly strong. The other area that's actually not as bad as people make it out to be, it's such a horrible thing, is the edge, which is our last group here, the edge defenders. Clay Matthews gets no love. Absolutely none whatsoever. I know his sack numbers aren't that great, but his pass rush grade was actually relatively high. It was the highest on the entire team, above Nick Perry. Didn't always translate to sacks, but pressuring the quarterback, he's not horrible at it. Run defense was incredible. He was this close to being elite in run defense. He had one of his better years in a very long time, Clay Matthews did. I've been saying we might cut him, but that's simply because of his contract. Right now he has zero dead money, and we're paying him like $10-11 million. So if we're in a real bad pinch, it would kind of make sense. But Clay Matthews and Nick Perry, and again, we're talking about our base defense. Clay Matthews, Nick Perry, Kenny Clark, Mike Daniels, Jake Ryan, Blake Martinez. Every single one of these guys was graded as good. There's not one guy that's average or below. That's a solid front seven. There's not a lot of front sevens in the NFL that are just that solid. And then you figure, depending on the package, maybe you got Muhammad Wilkerson in there or whatever. That's solid. Ahmad Brooks, not nearly as high of a grade as Clay or Perry, but he's a talented guy. Chris Odom is a young guy that's definitely developmental. He was a preseason darling, had probably more sacks, I think, than anybody else with the Falcons. Vince Beagle has some promise to him. Reggie Gilbert has some talent. Kyler Fackrell is kind of the butt of every joke, which, by the way, it's, you know, just to put things in context, and I agree Kyler Fackrell is terrible, but I'm just going to real quick, and we'll end it with this. I'm going to read some names of players that are worse than Kyler Fackrell, according to Pro Football Focus. Ready? Worse than Kyler Fackrell, the guy that everybody thinks is the worst on the team. Montravius Adams, Quentin Dial, Joe Thomas, Jermaine Whitehead, Marwin Evans, Kentrell Bryce, Josh Jones, Quentin Rollins, Kevin King, Josh Hawkins, Devon House, Ulrich John, which, give me a break, Kyle Murphy, Jason Spriggs, Lucas Patrick, Justin McCray, Corey Linsley, Lance Kendricks, Richard Rodgers, yes, Jimmy Graham last year, Devontae Mays, Michael Clark, who is supposedly a god in Green Bay, Jeff Janis, Geronimo Allison, and DeShone Kizer. All had worse grades last year. So just putting things in context here. And again, Kyler Fackrell is the only guy with a bad grade on the entire edge region, outside linebacker, whatever. So it would be nice, yes, to get an edge rusher. I'm considering looking at the draft. I just don't know if there's anybody at 14 that's really worth. I'm still real big on Harold Landry. I would not be upset. Davenport, not into it at all. Don't like him. Don't want him. Let's just look at it real quick since I got my list over here. So I know we're running way over, but I don't care. I haven't done this in a while. Let's just go through this list. Saquon Barkley is going to be gone. Absolutely worth it at 14 if he's there. Bradley Chubb would be just incredible, but he'll be long gone. Minkah Fitzpatrick, I don't really get it. But again, as I've said before, not a scout, and it seems pretty unanimous that people really like him. So yes, if he's there, that'd be great. Quentin Nelson, I think, would just be unbelievable if we can get a guy like Quentin Nelson to step in. If you think about it, if we're just looking in the short term, you get a guy like Quentin Nelson, you replace Lane Taylor. You have Bakhtiari. You have one of the best guard prospects to come out in a very long time. Talking to or listening to a lot of people out there, they're saying Quentin Nelson could be the best guard in the NFL in a very short period of time. So then you have Corey Linsley at center, rebounding. You have Jari Evans for another year. He's still just an average guy. And then you get Balaga on his uptick year. So it could be, with just that move, a very, very good year at offensive line. And that's assuming you make no other moves. So one guard like Quentin Nelson could be pretty huge. Quarterbacks, obviously not a thing. Derwin James, I would love. Roquan, I mean, if we pick him, I'm not going to be upset. He's a super talented guy. But I just have my concerns about an inside linebacker that, you put one finger on him and the guy's flailing backwards and he's so weak it drives me nuts. And I know, well, you put him on the weak side. Now, listen, if it's 3rd and 2 and you got a clean shot on the quarterback and he drives you back 2 yards, you suck at inside linebacker, and that's Roquan Smith. I expect you to be able to stop a quarterback. He cannot at all. Tremaine Edmonds, I already said, he's one of my favorites. I just, the comparisons to Brian Urlacher are real. He's very young. He's very raw. I think he's like 19. I mean, we're talking really, really young. But man, oh man, you want to talk about a talented guy. I watched a film breakdown of him, and they're little things, not big things that can't be coached. Like for example, one of the things that's a problem with him is rather than being patient, because he has speed. So when he's patient and he waits for the running back or whoever it is and he goes and gets him, it's awesome. But sometimes he's always in a hurry to just run right into the mess. And what happens? He gets stuck in a pile of guys. Running back goes around this way and he's just, trying to fight his way out, and it's just a mess. Now occasionally he gets lucky, he darts through and gets the quarterback. But that's a simple thing that can be coached out of him. right? A guy like Pettin and all these coaches that we have that are NFL caliber coaches, that's not going to be a problem coaching out of them. With the raw tools and again being 19 years old, I would love Tremaine Edmunds. Vita Vea is silly at this point. There was a time when I thought, yeah, maybe we'll get that nose tackle, whatever, because Mike Pettin likes those true nose tackles, those guys that can really clog up. But man, we're more than set at the defensive line position. Calvin Ridley, I really like him. I just don't see that as being realistic, even with losing Jordy Nelson. I would not hate it at all. I would be very excited if we got Calvin Ridley because I genuinely like him when I watch him play. I know he didn't blow anybody away with his 40 time or anything else, but you want a guy that can get open. Calvin Ridley is unbelievably impressive. He played for a quarterback that was not very good in an offense that is not super conducive to wide receivers, right? They're sort of that ground and pound kind of offense. But this guy, man, oh man, you talk about play speed and just the ability to just find the open space and just, you know, run these routes that have guys leaving their shoes behind. Um, I just think he's incredibly impressive. Do I think they're going to pick him? No, I don't think so. But whatever. Denzel Ward, um, I was watching, never, Colin Coward, and I don't really know people's reputation all that much. But he's one of the guys, like a lot of guys that have some ins, which doesn't really mean very much. But he had him going number 4 overall, which is a little silly. But long story short, it's probably unlikely that Denzel Ward is available at 14. He's one of the quickest risers in this, and he had a tremendous combine. So pretty unlikely he's even going to be available. Deron Payne I have on this list being next up. Um, Whoa, just lost my screen. There we go. I'm back. I just don't see that. Again, another defensive lineman, not going to happen. Baker Mayfield is a quarterback. Darius Geis, again. Do you take a guy like that at 14? No, I don't think so. Davenport, I do not like. Mike McGlinchey, again, I said is a very real possibility. And I honestly wouldn't be surprised if he went before 14. The fact that nobody's really talking about that is surprising to me. It is one of the most critical positions, maybe the third most important position in all the NFL. There's no solid tackles outside of Mike McGlinchey. So having him go a little earlier than 14 would not be all that surprising. Josh Jackson I like, but there's not a lot to go off of. Again, a non-scout like myself, I watch Josh Jackson. I'm like, yeah, I want that dude for sure. He's a freak. But there's some hesitation and tentativeness about Josh Jackson that has me a little bit worried. Do I want to take a guy like that at 14, especially since I'm just paranoid every time the Packers draft a corner? I'm just thinking, well, he's going to suck because we just don't know how to do that. And just kind of skipping around. I don't know. To be completely honest, as I look at this and as I make a list of players like these guys I would really like if we got by 14, it's very unlikely we're going to get anybody that I really like. I think the guys that are really solid, that are guaranteed game changers, I think they're gone by the time you get to 14. And you end up either reaching or getting raw guys, or you get a guy like Davenport, and I'm just going to cry. Harold Landry I like, but you can see on my list I have him at 27. He's not seen as being this kind of elite prospect. I like trading. I like the idea of trading, whether it's trading up. Quentin Nelson could fall because he's a guard and that's an undervalued position. If he slides to like 8 or 9 or whatever and the Packers can trade up and get him, I would love that. If they can't and we're sitting at 14 and all these guys I like are gone, I like trading back. I think there's a ton of talent starting at like 20 and below. Guys like Isaiah Wynn. Harold Landry. If you can get Harold Landry at like 22, if the Bills or whoever wants to move up, grab one of these quarterbacks, if they're whatever it is, if we can go back and get Harold Landry and pick up another second round, so we end up having 3 in that range between like 20 and 64, where there's just a disgusting amount of talent. This is a long podcast. I started at 5 because I didn't want an alarm interruption. But there's a ton of talent, and it's edge rush talent, which there isn't very much in this draft. There's a ton of corner talent.
a ton of wide receiver talent. I mean, we could get a pass rusher, a corner, and a wide receiver by the time the second round is done, and we still have a ton of picks left after that. So um, I don't know, I'm just thinking out loud. But the more I look at this, the more I feel like 14 is just a terrible spot. I hate 14, and I'm angry at everybody who said they didn't like when I was saying we should just tank the rest of the year because we're not going to get anywhere because I want to pick inside the top 10. Oh, you're a terrible fan. Yeah, well, we're going to miss out on Quentin Nelson because we had to win one or two more games with stupid Brett Hundley. I'm sorry. I shouldn't say stupid Brett Hundley. I'm sorry, Brett. I don't mean that. I like you. You're a good person. Um, yeah, but we're going to end it there. 55 minutes. This is an hour long. That's out of control. So it's a little awkward because I have to say goodbye to the podcast and then say goodbye to the video folks. So goodbye, podcast. Have a lovely day. And for you video folks, I'm going to come over here and say goodbye. Thanks for checking it out. A little bonus footage. Be sure to check out YouTube and everything else. If you haven't seen the podcast or know that a podcast existed for Packernet, it does. It's out there if you're somebody that likes to listen to stuff on podcasts at work or whatever when you're working out. You want to listen to me when you're working out. I can totally understand that. So be sure to check out. You can go to packernet.com. You can find it. It's on iTunes. It's on all that stuff. So, anyways, have a phenomenal day. It's Wednesday, and that's sad, but we'll get through this. Take care. Bye bye.